Okay, my concern on retirement homes. In the 60s, when HDB embarked on a building program, we can build 100,000 units for 5 years. Real affordable house, 6,005 to 12,000 up to 1975. Now, this bunch of people are aging now. The last statistic was last year was about 330,165 years and above. And by 2030, the famous 1 million number. So what I suggest is that for next 20 years, we must start building affordable housing. Let's start with, like HDB in the 60s, 100,000 units for next 5 or 10 years by 2020. And we really price in affordable, 100,000 to 150,000 for 45 to 55 square meter apartments and that. And also this will help those working class Singaporeans living in aging HDB housing that's now 50, 60 years old, so that they can, let's say, they get at least 450,000 out of it, reverse mortgage by HDB. You pay 150,000 for the SA apartment, you got $300,000. Just to protect them, why not make them take out $120,000, put in CPF Life, so that every month they get $600 per month on it. Okay.
Our concept for aging is to build a city for all ages. That means Singapore will be a great city for families, a great city for the young, a great city for people who are in their business prime and looking for opportunities, as well as a great city for those who are older. All right. So the first point I want to emphasize is that Singapore must continue to remain home for all of us throughout our entire life cycle. The next thing is, do we believe in aging in place? So what does aging in place mean? It means that for most of us, there is a certain comfort, emotional comfort, from a sense of familiarity. Right? I grew up in this place, or I grew up in this home, my wife and my children are in this home. And as we grow older, I think many of us would like to continue to age in the same home. Now, that's nice to have, I think, at an emotional level, but there is a practical challenge. If our children move out, will our homes be empty? Will there be more room than we need? And that's where, for some people, both for practical reasons as well as financial reasons, may say, no, I want to downgrade. I want to move to a smaller home. And in the case of Singapore, there are many options. Right? If you've bought a flat many years ago, you would almost certainly, at this point in time now, have significant capital appreciation. For some people, they want to say, well, how, as I grow older, as I retired, how can I tap into the value of my flat? And even for that, they have options. You don't always have to sell your flat. You can rent a room or 2 rooms out. Or sometimes, you may decide to rent your entire flat out. Whilst you go and live, perhaps you rent a smaller place, or you live with your children or relatives in another place. So I'm saying that even for tapping the equity in your flat, you have options. Then the next thing is, if you want to move into, say, a studio apartment, and you know the HDB has been building studio apartments, and the studio apartments are carefully designed to be elder-friendly. I don't know how many of you have actually visited the studio apartments. You look at the layout of the toilet, you look at, the gentle ramps. There wouldn't be a step like we have down here. There's call buttons. Everything is within reach and convenient for someone who, as he's growing older, physically and his eyesight and his hearing may not be so optimal. Your question, and I think is a most valid question, is what about affordability? And this, let me repeat what the Minister for National Development has said, that we will continue to ensure that the vast majority, so in the case of Singapore, I think the estimate is that about 80% of all Singaporeans should be able to afford at least a 3-room, a 2 to 3 room flat, using his CPF, to pay off the mortgage every month. That means we're not taking away from your take-home pay, right? So HDB's objective is to ensure affordable housing for the vast majority of people. Even for the low income, you would have heard recent announcements that Minister Ma made in Parliament just a week ago, where there are additional grants given for low-income Singaporeans. And these grants can be quite considerable. I think it can go up to about $60,000 or $70,000 cash, which is put into their CPF account, which they can then use to buy a flat. So that the vast majority, 90% of us, are owners rather than tenants in a flat. That way you have a hedge against inflation. That way you have a stake in the success of Singapore, especially for the future. And more importantly, you have options when you grow older. You want to move in a smaller flat, you can rent, you can buy either another HDB apartment, or you can buy a studio apartment. If you need money, again, you can find ways to liquidate some of the equity that you've built up over the years.